Hi everyone and welcome to another Instagram live. Just gonna wait for a couple of people to come on. Hi, welcome to another Instagram live, and today is with Melissa Mead. So I'm just gonna wait for a couple of people to join. Hello. Okay. Give us a thumbs up if the connection is okay and if you can see and if you can hear me. Hi, hello. Good. Hi, Melissa. Perfect. Hello. Okay, so today is World Sepsis Day and I am interviewing Melissa Mead. I'm just going to invite her in and then we can get started. Hello everybody, let's get a few more people on. Hello. But please give me a thumbs up if the connection is all okay. I need to know if the connection's all okay. Hello. Hi.
Hi Jess, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, good.
Excuse the voice.
Yeah, you do sound a little bit snuffly.
Oh God, I've woken up and it's like just hit like with it. So I'm, fingers crossed it's just a flu.
No.
Just a cold. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I can imagine that today is quite a hard day for you and your family, or do you kind of just get through?
Yeah, I think so. I think every day is a hard day. You wake up and you're reminded that your child's not here because of a condition that could easily have been treated. But certainly at this time of year, because obviously we try and be as active as we can on social media. So you can't be reminded of your loss because it's always there. But it's immersing yourself in it all the time is emotionally draining, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can imagine. So for everyone that has joined, today is another Instagram live interview and with myself, the UK World Sepsis Day Ambassador, Jess Tuffield. So I'm joined by Melissa Mead. So let's jump straight in and just because I feel like we're going to be talking for ages. This is the first time I've met you virtually. So Melissa, do you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone kind of a brief overview of William, I suppose?
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Jess. So I'm Melissa Mead, and I'm an ambassador for the UK SEPSIS TRUST, and I have been since 2016. My relationship with sepsis is that I had no idea what it was until it killed my 1-year-old son, William. He died in December 2014. He'd had a chest infection for a number of weeks, and that developed into pneumonia. It was untreated. We went to the doctors a number of times. We were sent home. It was just a cold. He's in nursery. Until he got quite poorly the day before he died, 2 days before he died. And his temperature was 41. We went to the doctors. He really wasn't with it. They just said it was teething, it was like a cold, sent us home. And then the day before he died, we called 111. We saw another doctor. We were sent home. We were basically really placated, I suppose. I was telling them all about the signs. At the time, I had no idea what sepsis was, so I was completely oblivious. All these seemingly insignificant symptoms in isolation are not so dangerous, but together were catastrophic. I was explaining to the doctor that he hadn't wet his nappy, that he wasn't eating, he wasn't drinking, he was being sick, he was quite pale, he was cold, all of these sorts of things, and everything was explained away, like, well, he's not going to be weeing or pooing if he's being sick. He wouldn't tolerate any clothes on him. The most I could get on him was like a little vest. So they said, well, he's going to feel cold to the touch, and if he's quite pale, if he's poorly, everything was explained away. There was a reason for everything. despite the fact that this was like the third or the fourth time in 24 hours that I'd got in touch with health, you know, the health services, because I was really concerned. But he had, the day before he died, I can remember specifically when I telephoned 111. That's the out of hours telephone NHS system here in the UK, if you're not in the UK. And they asked me what his temperature was, and they asked me to take it 3 times during the phone call so that we could get an average. And his temperature was 35.4. And they said, that's really good, you've got his temperature down. And so it was false reassurances like that. There was that complete lack of awareness, not just on my part, but on the part of the call advisor, on the part of the doctors, on the part of everyone who was trying to instantly help us. So basically, I put William to bed that evening, and he slept through the night. And I went in the morning, and he had died. I checked on him at 5:30 in the morning. He had sat up and had a little drink of his sippy cup. And then I woke up probably just after 8 in the morning, and I looked, we'd got one of those little cameras, you know, you can spy on your kids.
Yeah.
And he was facing away from the camera, and I just assumed that he was asleep. And I said to Paul, William's dad, I said, oh, he's really must be exhausted, he's not woken up yet. So I put my hair up and went in, and we had blackout blinds, and I didn't have my glasses on. And I was calling his name, and he just wasn't responding. And I went over to his cot, and I stroked his cheek, and it was warm, but it just wasn't normal. And I bent down and put my arm through the bar of the cot and stroked his arm, which was quite cold. And then I stroked his side, and he was stiff. So
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I've told this story a million times, but it doesn't get easier.
No.
And I just opened the blind, and he'd very obviously passed away. And I just started screaming, and basically hell started from that moment. There was nothing that could be done. He was very obviously passed away. And that we called the ambulance, and the paramedics were there really, really quickly. And I think within 7 minutes of me calling for an ambulance, he had been pronounced dead. It was that quick. And I think at that point, I had just literally no idea what had just happened. You know, as a new mum, I'd been told that a number of times, you're a new mum, you're bound to be worried. I had looked out for those kind of meningococcal rashes, those rashes that don't blanch. But I had no idea about sepsis. I had no idea that a seemingly insignificant infection could lead to something so life-threatening. And I didn't know what symptoms to look out for. And when we called for help, we trusted what we were told, you know. So William had to go away. He went away for a post-mortem, and we got him back on Christmas Eve. And the first thing the coroner said to me was, did William have a cough? And I kind of laughed, like a nervous laugh, like he had a cough for ages, you know. And I said, why? What relevance does that have, you know? And she said, well, he had pneumonia. And I said, do you mean he had pneumonia? I said, we'd taken him to the doctors a number of times, about 5 or 6 times in the preceding few weeks, because he had this cough persistent. He was coughing up phlegm. He was losing weight. And she said, basically, he had a collapsed lung. He had a pleural effusion, which is where the chest cavity is full of viscous fluid. The pathologist said that had been there for 7 to 10 days, that pleural effusion. He said there would have been little or no air movement in William's chest on the left-hand side. He had an abscess in his upper lung lobe, and he had sepsis. And I said, my God, that must be really rare. I've never heard of that. And the first thing I did is what everyone does, is they Google.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, this is not rare. This is really not rare. Why wasn't I told about this? Why didn't anyone? Because, you know, the thing is, even if a doctor had said to me on that Friday or that Saturday evening, you're concerned, let's just get him checked out, I would have immediately gone into panic mode, like most people do when they've got a young child who can't articulate how they're feeling. You know, he couldn't say to me, Mummy, it hurts here, or this is how I feel. He was 1.
Yeah.
So we were very much, you know, kids compensate. He played until he physically couldn't play anymore. He's not like an adult who kind of takes to their bed and feels a bit sorry for themselves because they know that they're feeling poorly and they know that rest will get them better. But so we were very much at the mercy of what we were told. Yeah, so he didn't need to die. The inquest found that William could have and should have been saved with better care. And then we investigated further. We pushed for an investigation, and an NHS England report, root cause analysis, found 16 failings in his care and 4 missed opportunities to save his life. So I don't think it's difficult to say that there could be anything worse than losing your child, but knowing that he could have and should have been saved is even harder to live with. Does that make sense?
Do you know, because I know about William because of you, obviously, and through the UK SEPSIS Trust, but hearing it from you and knowing the details, it is shocking. And things that you have just said, I wasn't aware of. So where did you go from there? Like, because I can't even imagine. I'm not a mum, but I've got a little brother, and if he lost his life and it was preventable, I don't know how I would have coped with that. So where did you go from there? What happened after that?
So obviously the post-mortem showed up quite a few catastrophic errors, certainly because, you know, we had taken him to the doctors. If we hadn't have taken him to the doctors, there wouldn't have been that opportunity to establish that something was wrong. Ultimately, if he had been treated for it was found that the cough, the sputum that he was coughing up was actually a bacterial chest infection. So if he had been given antibiotics, the likelihood is that would have cleared it up.
Yeah.
But at the time, doctors were under pressure not to prescribe antibiotics, which I completely get. However, when it's clinically evident to do so, they have to be given. Ultimately, if he'd had this chest infection, if he had been given antibiotics, people still go on to develop pneumonia, but he'd been on the radar. These antibiotics aren't working. Let's go to hospital. Let's have IV antibiotics. Let's have fluids, whatever it takes. But there was no one. There was, and so basically, the inquest found that his death could have been prevented. So I had to. I don't want this to be about a blame game, because that's never what Williams. Whenever I've kind of campaigned and whenever I've spoken to the media on a number of times, as you know, I've never wanted it to be about blame. I've never wanted to point the finger. People make mistakes because people are humans. Forgiveness is something different. I don't think I'll ever forgive, but I'm not angry anymore at them. But ultimately, it was obvious that something had gone wrong. It very much, the door was shut in our face. It became a them and us process against the massive machine that is NHS litigation, because they didn't really want to investigate. They didn't want to find something wrong, which for me is like, well, if this could happen to us, how many other people could it happen to? How can we prevent this from happening again? You know, ultimately, most people, as you probably know, are overcautious with children rather than undercautious. So if this was how cautious went, how would undercautious go? So, so for us, I mean, I think, as you well know, I started lobbying the then Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, who, love him or loathe him, I know he's not very well liked, but he listened. He listened to us. And we pushed and pushed and pushed. And I think I lost count at 600 emails, you know, speaking to NHS. You know, we had to go through a whole investigation, you know, where they take statements, where they look through the investigation, where they look through his records, where they get independent experts to say what they would do in the situation. And every step of the way, I think at one point I was called a constructive nuisance, which was in a way a compliment, I suppose. But the thing is, I had to push. You know, the first report that came back said, oh, they couldn't have done anything differently. Perhaps they could have just given him an inhaler, given him antibiotics earlier on, but there wasn't really any kind of accountability. There wasn't really any results from an investigation that was satisfactory. And so I pushed back and I said, hang on a minute, no, this is not acceptable. Who have you looked, you know, who's investigated this? And it was basically the people that look after the doctors down here in the southwest had conducted the investigation. I said, it's basically like marking your own homework. This needs to be independent. This needs to be looked at by some people that are completely unbiased, that are not going to be swayed by what they find in the report. I wanted everything to be completely independent, you know. And that was the result, that we had this investigation that I was satisfied with, that found all the failings, that took into account our account of events, because ultimately I was with William 24 hours a day, apart from when he was in nursery, of course. You know, I knew William. I knew that something wasn't right, and no one had listened to me. And I think something that was written in the report was quite damning, really. And it said, you know, without the help of William's parents, Melissa and Paul, we would never have found the conclusions that we found, because there was just, you know, there was no, we were completely involved from day one to the very end, which is quite rare in an investigation. You know, quite often the family, they come and they take a statement from the family, and then they come back 6 months later with a finalised investigation. But we were involved throughout the whole process. I refused to not to be. So this report was going to be published on the NHS website, like that's a standard kind of process. And I knew that it would be picked up by the media, because the media had been at William's inquest. And I knew that if they picked up this report, they would finger point. It would be a blame exercise. It wouldn't, there would be no kind of investigate that. I don't really know what I'm trying to say here, but there would be no focus on patient safety. It would all be about, look who, you know, allowed
the blame
to
game.
die.
Yeah, a blame game.
And I didn't want it to be about that. I didn't want it to be about the doctors that were involved. I wanted this to be about William. So I did something that probably not a lot of people would do, but I got his report and I sold it to the press. But I sold it to the press with the premise that I would be able to proofread everything that was written. I was paid a significant sum, which I donated to the Sepsis Trust. And William's story was front page news in January 2016. And it was about sepsis. It was not about blame. It was not about what went wrong in William's care. It was about, how could this not go wrong again? How can we change things to be different? How can we make this process easier for someone else? What can we do to change you know, the recognition of sepsis and the treatment of sepsis? How can we raise awareness? So that kind of started the journey. And I can remember that Heidi Alexander, the then health secretary, the Labour health, you know, and she recalled Jeremy Hunt's Parliament on this day, and she said, what have you got to say about this? And he apologised to us in Parliament on behalf of the government and the NHS. And so I just tweeted him and I said, how about you apologise to our face? And we met him a few days later, and he did apologise. And I said, the best apology is changed behaviour.
Absolutely.
I said, don't apologise to us, change it. Make this right for someone else. And so we went through a whole process of months and months and months of meetings with Public Health England, Health Education England, NHS England, the UK SEPSIS TRUST, and developed a campaign that was aimed at the under fives, which was launched in December 2016. Over 3 million leaflets went out. It was quite a significant, you know, point in the journey, I suppose. And it was at that point then I was on board with the Sepsis Trust, and I then campaigned, got it on the side of the ambulances, we got it in the bounty packs that are given to newborn, you know, parents with newborn. There's lots and lots and lots of things that we've done along the way. And I think for us, you know, when you're educating a healthcare professional, you are sort of preaching to the converted, because they do know about sepsis. It's not that they don't, it's whether they consider it or not. Sorry, that's okay. Hello, look, yeah.
This is you.
That is me. Look, do you want to say hello? Do you want to say hello?
Oh, bless you. Hello. You okay?
Who's that?
That's Jess. We're just talking about William. We're just talking about William. Who's William?
But look at you.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
That's you.
This is what I got to call this. Look.
Oh, wow.
Picture is back on its
Call this. It's called call this.
It's called.
and this was our house.
It was our house, wasn't it?
Yeah, but now it's an old one, so that now it's a place.
Yeah.
So
okay.
shall we leave this one and stay there?
Maybe.
For lots of years.
You go and show Daddy, and then maybe we'll do that. Good boy.
Daddy, can we go to holiday now?
Sorry.
Oh,
Can we go to here now?
This is Arthur for everyone who doesn't know, and Arthur is William's little brother. He's 4 actually in 2 weeks.
Oh.
Sorry about that interruption.
No,
I can't remember where I was.
It's absolutely fine. So you was talking about how medical professionals, it's whether they know about it, but whether they consider it.
Yeah, that's it. I think, you know, you're preaching to the converted with the healthcare professionals. I mean, they all know about it. Of course, they're taught about infection. They're taught about deterioration in not just paediatrics, but adults as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the point, the fact of the matter is, unless you consider it, you're not going to treat it. So for me, it was knowledge is power with sepsis. You can have a world-class health system. You can have 20 doctors for every patient. But ultimately, if you've got a patient that is in the community that has no idea about sepsis and they are deteriorating, they're not going to access that healthcare. They're not going to use that buzzword. They're not going to speak up and say, hey, could this be sepsis? They're basically sitting ducks at home on their sofa. And for me, yes, there is that element about ensuring that healthcare professionals, one, recognise, treat it, think about it, and do everything that they possibly can do to make the outcome different. But we need to get those patients to that hospital in the first place. And I think there is, 65 million people in the UK, probably more now. We need to educate them because ultimately knowledge is power with sepsis. And I think that's what we need to get across. Because if I had known about sepsis that day, regardless of what the doctors had told me on the phone, I would have been suspicious. I might have done something differently. I can remember doing an interview once with LBC radio station in London, and they said to me very candidly, and I suppose you could look at it and feel quite hurt, but they said, why didn't you just take him to hospital? I said, because I didn't know he was dying. If I had known that he was dying, of course I would have done something differently, but I didn't know. I trusted what the doctors had told me. I trusted that what they said was that his condition was non-significant. I trusted them that they said it was just a cold, that he was just teething. That's why he had this temperature to begin with. So how many times do you shun and push away? This is the 3rd or 4th time in 24 hours that I'd contacted healthcare professionals. Do you contact them a 5th or a 6th or a 7th? Where do you stop? And I think that's the difficulty, is I didn't have that knowledge. And I think that played a significant part in what happened to William, really.
I completely agree. I think with parents and family members being aware, it is significant. With myself, I didn't know what sepsis was until the nurse that blue lighted me said, you've got sepsis, and then thinking, well, what is that?
Yeah.
And you're on your own, and then even my mum didn't know. And then being sent home that evening to deteriorate at home. Again, unaware of what the deterioration was and how much I was going to deteriorate. So as a parent, what is your one message to other parents that are potentially watching? What is your key message to them?
Well, apart from the fact to look online and be more informed about sepsis, it's to trust your instincts. And I'd also say is to push. Ultimately, if you go to a doctor's with a child and you say, could this be sepsis? 9 times out of 10, it absolutely won't be, thank goodness. But there is a duty and a moral obligation for that doctor to say, this isn't sepsis because of this is right. Their heart rate is fine. Their blood pressure is fine. Their temperature is fine. They're playing. They're weeing. They're doing all of the things that they should be doing. That there is that obligation to be more informed. You have a right to understand. You have a right to ask questions. You have a right to know. And I think, you know, like I said earlier, I was told a million times, you know, you're a first-time mum, Melissa, of course you're going to be worried. Well, of course I am. It's my right to be worried. That's why I'm here. But don't tell me that I'm neurotic, because I'm not. I spend 24 hours a day with William. I knew he just wasn't right. And I think, you know, I did trust my instincts, because I went back and I went back and I went back. And now, you know, I could, you know, no matter... I think if you ask any parent that's lost a child, no matter how many times they tried to help them, they will always blame themselves, because ultimately your child is your responsibility, and it might be completely unfounded. But you always wish you could have done something differently, no matter how much you tried to get help, how many times you were sent home. You know, it's so I think for parents, if they know that something's just not right, then you know something's just not right, and that's not to be questioned. And I think for healthcare professionals, they need to listen. I remember doing speaking at a conference once, and it was to consultants, intensive care, nurses, A&E consultants, and someone stood up at the end, and I always invite questions off the floor, and someone said, Melissa, what do you want? What do you want from me? And I said, I want you to listen. Because if I say William's just not right, that means he's just not right. If your mum had said Jess is just not right, this is not normal behaviour for her, that means she's right, because she knows you. Your loved ones around you will notice those subtle differences, will be able to tell you what is normal for them and what is not. And as you know, sepsis doesn't just affect, obviously talking about children here, but adults, and quite a lot adults late on in their life. People that suffer with dementia, people that are not as coherent as me and you today. So what is different from them? What is normal for them? We need to listen to our public. We need to listen to our patients' families. We need to listen to the carers of those people that are perhaps in care homes or nursing homes or whoever it might be, who understand their loved one or their patient, And I think that's something that we can all do for free, is listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I feel like it is a huge issue. I don't, obviously you took part in the hashtag Around the World in 13 Days campaign, and the thing that struck me the most this year, emotionally as well, was the amount of children that were recent. I'm talking 2018, 2019, and this is still happening. And I get so emotional with it, because it's preventable. But what do you think that we can do? What can we do to stop this from happening even more?
It's very difficult to answer, because if you look 25, 30 years ago, when meningitis was at its peak in terms of killing people, and there was a massive nationwide campaign, and meningitis it's not easy to spot, because usually when it's spotted, it's too late with that rash. But ultimately, there was a blanket nationwide approach to everyone just needs to know this. The difficulty is at the moment is, one, sepsis is difficult to spot. Like I always say, when I speak to members of the public, they ask what to look out for. You can detail the symptoms. But ultimately, the reason why people struggle to spot it or treat it, and even doctors, is because you're always going to have those symptoms, that original infection, i.e. William had a chest infection, so he was off his food, he did have a bit of a temperature, he had a cough. When is it different? When is it sepsis? When does it tip into being something more severe? And I think ultimately, like I said, knowledge is power. People need to know what it is. But the harsh reality of it is that every condition is fighting for the same pot of money. Do we focus on diabetes? Do we focus on cancer? Do we focus on MS? Do we focus on strokes? What do we focus on? And each one of those things that I've mentioned, and every other condition, is absolutely right to be at that table fighting for that pot of money. But that's what it comes down to. Obviously the last 6 months has been everything about COVID, and rightly so. But people are still dying from sepsis. People are still dying from MIs. People are still dying from cancer. These people are still out there. They're not approaching healthcare professionals. They might be presenting too late. And it's all about that focus. I mean, obviously, I'm an ambassador for the UK SEPSIS TRUST, and we're a charity that supports community-based awareness, making sure that that message gets out to the people where they are. You know, ultimately, people will be sitting at home scrolling through their phone. People are on Instagram today. Get that message on social media. Get that message on TV. Get that message in the newspaper. Like I said earlier, we've had it on ambulances. Best place to put it. Everyone, for some kind of weird, strange reason, if you see an ambulance, you're like, oh, where are they going? What are they doing? You look.
Yeah.
It's a massive, shouty, big yellow bus driving through with flashing lights. Get the message on there. And it's just about getting the message to where people are. It's being intuitive. It's about using the platforms that we have already got. So it's difficult, but ultimately it does come down to money, and it shouldn't. Ultimately, doctors are overworked, underpaid, and under-resourced. Like I said, if you walked into A&E and you've got 5 patients that all had sepsis, but there were 20 doctors there to treat them, they'd all get treated. But you've got 10 minutes if you're lucky with one patient, moving on, and then you've got this to do, and you've got to go over here. It's very, very difficult. We just need money to create awareness. You know, television adverts cost money. You'll see all the time Macmillan have adverts on the TV. They have a massive platform, and I always think other charities, for example, like Macmillan Cancer Research, the British Heart Foundation, those sorts of things. People with other diseases, other lifelong debilitating conditions, there's usually a journey. Like if someone, heaven forbid, is diagnosed with cancer, they hopefully go through a journey of chemotherapy, of treatment, and hopefully they go into remission at the end. They have a journey that is usually lasts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, and then hopefully a lifetime if they recover. With sepsis, you either get it and you die, or you get it, you're treated and think you've just had an infection and you just go off into the community. It's very, very difficult to engage and tap into those people, because they are people like you who had significant sepsis and, you know, almost lost your life, or us who have already lost a loved one. And so thankfully there are fewer of us than there are people that survive cancer. And that gives it some kind of context, in the sense that those people will then go on and think, all of this support that I've had from these charities, I can give something back to them. Whereas me and you sit here and think, what can we do? And we find the UK SEPSIS TRUST, you know, the World Sepsis Day campaign, and you need to get involved. And that is what it is. It's about being involved. The problem is we're preaching to converted. You know, it's accessing people that don't already know. So, you know, you can share as much as you like on social media, and the same people will share it and share it and share it. But it's accessing people that you haven't already accessed. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And that's why I always say it's so important, even just on the social media front, is even just by sharing a post from the UK Sepsis Trust, there could potentially be someone on your social media that doesn't know what sepsis is, and then they go on to share it. So something so small can also reach somebody that doesn't know about it.
Yeah.
And that's why I find social media is very powerful. But in the sense of national campaigns, I completely agree with you. We do need a national campaign, and hopefully in the future there will be one. But it's just getting there, isn't it? It is just getting it and getting the attention for it, because sepsis doesn't have the attention that it deserves.
No.
And you know, as a survivor, it's frustrating. I can imagine it's very frustrating for you as well. So to sort of round this off, How have the UK Sepsis Trust supported you? Because they are an amazing charity. I know you're the ambassador for them, but how have they supported you? Because so many people rave about them. They're incredible. And we're so lucky to have them here in the UK. Many people are commenting saying that they have no support in their country. So we're very fortunate to have them. So how did they support you?
When William's story first came about, the Sepsis Trust were quite small and there was very little known about them. I know that when William's story was thrust into the spotlight today, there was I did 40 television interviews and things. It really brought them into the spotlight. I think people thought that they were a bigger charity than what they were, because they were responding in such a way that was significant. You know, it wasn't like there was one or two people sitting in an office. It was like they had managed to touch so many people. But what the Sepsis Trust did for me was they gave me hope. And at a time when I wanted the whole world to swallow me up because life wasn't worth living without William, they gave me hope that someone was listening. They gave me hope that someone was doing something. And I think sometimes that's more than anything that you need, because it got me through the day. It got me focused on doing something that was positive. It allowed me to, you know, to do the campaigning that I have done has allowed me to be William's mum still, in a way that, you know, there's no other way that I can be his mum anymore. So this is my way of being his mum. And they helped garner that. They helped me to flourish doing that. And so I can't ever be thankful enough to them for doing that, you know.
They are amazing. And for anyone watching that doesn't know about the UK Sepsis Trust, I'm going to, after this has ended, I'm going to share some of their social media posts so that you can click on there and go and visit their social media sites and their website. They've got so much information on there. And like Melissa and myself, you may not have known about them, but they are an incredible charity. I do quite a bit for them as well. And if you're not from the UK and you're from America, you have got the Sepsis Alliance. I don't know too much about them, in all honesty, but I've heard very good things about them. Melissa, do you know, have you got anything to say on the Sepsis Alliance?
So I do know that Ron Daniels, the chief executive of the UK Sepsis Trust, sits on the board of the Sepsis Alliance, and I do know that we work in harmony in terms of the same sort of messaging. Obviously, the terminology is slightly different in one country to the next. Health systems are completely different, obviously. But I do know that we try and harmonise so that the messaging is very similar, because ultimately the same message has to go out to everyone. So, and again, it's that sharing of information, sharing of research, sharing of medical advances. That's what's really, really important, because for me, you can look across the UK, and I've seen messages pop up on here below about hospitals that have underperformed or hospitals that have not done the right thing. There are pockets of excellence in the UK. There are places where, you know, ultimately bad news makes good news. That's why we see the horror stories in the newspapers, on the news, etc. What we don't hear about is that Dr. So-and-so treated and saved the life of 5-year-old Bobby. We don't hear about all of the success stories. And sometimes we're marred and you know, you're burdened by bad news. But what we must remember is that the UK has come along significantly, especially since I started campaigning for sepsis, the way it recognises and treats it. And I think what we must remember is that there is best practice in the UK, there is pockets of excellence, and that is how we share that, how we change attitudes and change behaviours, because that's the most difficult thing that I've come up against. You know, doctors have access to all the instruments that they need, all the tests that they need, but it's a change in that behaviour, a change in that attitude. Could this be sepsis? Let's think about it. Let's be open-minded. Let's listen to the patient. Let's not just be, well, this is just that, and I'm not considering anything else. so there is a long way to go. There is a really long way to go, but we are going in the right direction. It's just how many more lives have to be lost until we get to a point where we are talking about it all the time, like we did with meningitis 20 years ago. But then Rome wasn't built in a day, and I wish it was. The meningitis campaign, I talk about that quite often because it's so successful. That it was massively successful, and obviously the deaths from meningitis now are less than 1,000 a year. So it worked. And that's the thing, is we can't get a vaccine for sepsis. We can get a vaccine for flu, we can get a vaccine for pneumonia, we can get a vaccine for lots of the things that lead to sepsis, but we can't get a vaccine for sepsis because it's a reaction. What we need is that knowledge. Knowledge is power. Talk to people, share it, like you say, on social media. Go out and tell someone about sepsis and ask them to tell someone else. Get involved. Join up as a volunteer for the UK Sepsis Trust. I know at the moment I speak for many charities struggling. People are not at work. People, especially in the UK, are furloughed. There are no fundraising events, charity events. They've all been put on hold. As a charity, I know the UK Sepsis Trust, most of its income will come from community-based people like you and I doing coffee mornings, people like you and I going out and doing a 5-kilometre run. There is lack of access to government funding. There is philanthropy, there are businesses, but businesses are closed at the moment. There are a lot of people that are struggling. Our support groups have had to go online, but not everyone has that access, in terms of, I run a support group down here in the UK, in Cornwall. Half of the people that are in my support group don't have internet. They don't have a computer. How do we access them? How do we make sure that they're still doing okay? So it's about accessibility. It's about equality. And it's just about getting involved. It's about using your voice, using your ears, listening, and doing all of those things. So if you can get involved, go onto the Sepsis Trust website, have a look. If you can afford to donate, please do. If you can't, just get involved. Talk about it. Sometimes, that's all it takes. So that's
absolutely. You basically summed up everything that I was thinking of saying. So
sorry.
You know that we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It just comes down to awareness, and like Melissa just said, talking about it, share it. Anything that Melissa has just stated, try to get involved. That's the key thing here, is just get involved. Your voice can make a major difference. Everyone's voice is so powerful. So I'm just going to look back through a few of the comments so that we can round this off. So, do you get a loss of balance and fainting feeling? I personally lost my eyesight in the first stages and had severe nosebleeds. So that was my one, that's how I knew that I wasn't right. But loss of balance and fainting isn't usually a key symptom. However, I have heard of people that have felt that way. But again, go onto the UK Sepsis Trust website. That's what we're pushing here today, is the UK Sepsis Trust website. They've got all the signs and all the symptoms on there that you need. My dad died of sepsis on the 14th of September 2016, literally overnight. He thought he was having a stroke and was treated for that as he didn't show a high temperature. I'm so sorry. I'm from Australia. My city hospital doesn't care. I lost my mum from sepsis on 2018. Just ask, could it be sepsis? The doctors will then have it in mind and can rule it out in their diagnosis. Absolutely.
Use the word
sepsis. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got here, I live in Ireland, and after surviving sepsis, I contacted the UK Sepsis Trust and found them fantastically supportive. I'm forever grateful. They are amazing. Anyone here in the UK will tell you that. Little Red's legacy. Little or no information from HSE about sepsis and sepsis awareness. Again, yeah, Little Red Legacy, they've got their own campaign. Check them out as well. So much support in Ireland for cancer patients and survivors, but not sepsis patients and survivors. I've heard that. Have you heard about that? You have, haven't you?
Yes. I think all I can say in terms of before COVID hit, the UK Sepsis Trust are starting to spread their wings in terms, we are the UK Sepsis Trust, but you have to have, you know, there's certain hoops that you've got to jump through in order to work in different territories like Northern Ireland, like Scotland, because there are smaller charities in those territories, and equally you want to work with people, not on people's toes. But just watch this space, because we are starting to head out into different territories. So
that's good news. That is good news. So everyone watch out for that one. Can you please send me the link? Yep, I will do that straight after this. Sending love to Melissa every day. That's from Dylan's mum.
Dylan's mum. Yeah.
She's lovely. So let's round this off. So one last message to everyone. What would it be to people watching that don't know what sepsis is, not just as a parent, just in general, as the UK Sepsis Trust ambassador? What is your one message to everyone? And then we can round this off.
It's very difficult to sit here and say, look out for these specific symptoms. All I can say is, if you are feeling poorly, if you are unwell, you or a loved one, Google what sepsis is, look at the symptoms. Are you experiencing those? And call for help and use the word sepsis. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. Be confident, make informed decisions. And that's ultimately what we need to do. Knowledge is power. And definitely, please come and support the UK Sepsis Trust, because we need you.
Well said. Well said. So anyone here in the UK, support the UK Sepsis Trust. And today, obviously, is World Sepsis Day. So we want to know what you're getting up to. Are you doing online fundraising, online events? Tag us at World Sepsis Day and myself. And if you're here in the UK, please tag the UK Sepsis Trust in anything that you're doing today. I know that this morning we had a shout out on Capital FM. They mentioned the signs, the symptoms, statistics, myself and the UK Sepsis Trust, which is amazing, which means that they're talking about it. But yeah, Melissa, thank you for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it. And even just listening to you, I know I've been sat just listening, but that's exactly the way I wanted it to go today, because, you know, you're doing so well, and this is the point of these interviews, is for people to sit and listen. And hopefully we have had an impact on at least someone watching this today. These are recorded and put onto YouTube. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I will send it to you as well. But give love to your family for me, and have a lovely day. And yeah, I'll speak to you very soon.
Speak to you soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Here in the UK. So